Yeah, technology is wonderful until it stops working, and then it really is awful.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's start.
Okay.
So welcome to the Front Forum podcast for the youth by the youth, aimed at youth empowerment and solving issues affecting the society. Yeah, and today I'm hosting Paige. Paige has been a psychiatric nurse for nearly 12 years. Her experiences have led her to pursue a master's in Arts and Counselling Psychology with the intent to specialize in helping healthcare providers to spread information on mental wellness. She has an Instagram page called anotherchapter.ca, which announces mental health blog. Also, a stand-up comedian, she finds ways to lightheartedly discuss difficult topics and loves to open the conversation about improving well-being. So, Paige, can you tell us?
Hello, everyone.
That was a big intro. Can you illustrate just a little bit more about yourself?
So I live in Canada, on the west coast of Canada, in a province called British Columbia. I have been Canadian all my life, and I live in a place called Kelowna. If you ever look it up, it's an absolutely stunning location in Canada, and I highly recommend people come to visit this beautiful city. But I love to go hiking. I love to go snowboarding. Those are my main two hobbies outside of stand-up comedy. But of course, with COVID-19, they do not have a lot of entertainment shows happening right now. So unfortunately, they consider laughing as a transmitter of COVID. So comedy for us right now, which is a bummer, but that's all right. I get to work and I get to do school, so I don't have much time for it anyways.
Yeah, so like, have you got to do any virtual shows?
I haven't been able to do a show since November was the last time I was able to do a comedy show.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking for people there who cannot do their jobs because of COVID.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, especially because we need laughter more than ever right now. I think it's just such a huge piece of our well-being, and unfortunately, all we can do is watch comedy and different music shows and stuff on TV right now, which is fine, but it's better in person, I would say.
Yeah, and something interesting about your introduction was there were two words that caught my attention: psychiatry and psychology. Can you tell us more about those and explain us what they mean?
Yeah, for sure. So, as you mentioned in my intro, I'm a psychiatric nurse. So, my specialty in nursing is to work with mental health and addictions. So, those are the two areas I work with in a hospital setting. So, I work in a psychiatric unit. One is very intense psychiatry, and the other side is a bit more mild psychiatry. And I also work in psychiatric emergency in the emergency department. So what the means is I work with people from all walks of life in whatever type of mental ailments that they are currently struggling in, whether it is because of a certain situation has caused a person to go into crisis, or if someone has been having symptoms over a long period of time. Honestly, I've pretty near seen everything at this point because 12 years is a long time in the field.
Yeah, and let's go back to the basics. Like, what is mental health in your opinion?
So mental health is basically whatever emotional and psychological reactions we have to stressors that are either external or internal. So that is the basics, but I'll go into a bit more of an explanation. Internal struggles are our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and the way we act or react is our internal stuff. External stuff is how our jobs influence us, our friends influence us, our families influence us, and those types of stressors that can kind of pop up, such as like your car breaking down or yourself accidentally breaking your cell phone or those kind of things. Those are external stressors. So yeah, there's multiple mental illnesses, but mental health within itself is just basically our actions, reactions, our brain trying to process all the things that come at us. And sometimes it manages them well, and other times it manages them not so well.
Yeah, that's very true. And now let's get into the causes of mental illness.
So if we look at mental illness as a whole, there's so much different research saying, did everything come from nurture or did everything come from nature? So is it bred into us? So like as we grow and change and have experiences happening, is that what causes mental illness? Or are we born with it? Do we have a genetic predisposition to getting a mental illness? The answer is both. So we do have genetic components, especially anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar mood disorder. Those forms of illnesses typically do have a family link. With other ones, depression and anxiety can also be influenced by external things. So if you grow up in, say, an abusive household, or if you have an incident happen, those kind of things can bring on different mental illnesses as well, or just like prolonged stress, living in, well, COVID is causing a lot of mental illnesses because people are isolated, people are feeling really lonely, people are feeling really hopeless because there doesn't seem to be an end coming yet. And so that would be like an external thing that influences how we feel. So yeah, it's a little bit of growing up with it and what happens to in our lives, like throughout our lives. And the other bit is sometimes we do have some genes that can lead us to be at risk.
Yeah, and what about trauma? Is trauma a mental illness?
Trauma itself is not a mental illness, but so trauma is an actual activity or something that happens that they're actually looking at trauma as actually a kind of somewhat like a mental health brain injury, which is where something extreme happens in which your brain struggles to process what exactly happened. So trauma is not a mental illness, but there are mental illnesses that stem from trauma. So something called adjustment disorder, that can be something caused by trauma. And post-traumatic stress disorder is also something that can occur as well. And things like depression and anxiety can come along with those things. But with post-trauma kind of symptoms, you can get terrible nightmares, flashbacks even when you're awake, where suddenly you feel like you're back in that situation. It can cause panic attacks, all those kind of things. So yeah, there are definitely mental illnesses that stem from trauma. Not everybody receives that. Because for example, people who go to war, some people come back and do have post-traumatic stress disorder, but others don't. So it just really depends on how our brain processes things. And in no way is it a weakness. We have no idea how our brains will process whatever happens to us. So a lot of people are very surprised when they come back or experience certain things and are feeling a lot different in their bodies and their minds.
Yeah. So this goes to the question: how common is mental illness?
Very common, extremely common. Yeah, everywhere there is mental illness. I know that there's a lot of countries that still don't openly discuss mental health. There are slowly but surely more and more places that are. Canada, the United States, and Australia and New Zealand are pretty vocal about it, as well as I think the United Kingdom is as well, but other places are also starting to catch up. But the thing is, there's so much stigma still. It's like a taboo topic in a lot of places, which makes me so sad, because the reality is we all can use support regardless of what's going on in our lives. And if we're really, really super strong, I'm afraid to be able to ask for help. But a lot of people don't really talk about mental health. So that's why this podcast is great, because people need to know, just need to know more about, know that it's okay to talk about.
Yeah, and we come here and we talk about it, and now we have to say, how do we know we are mentally healthy?
So that's such a difficult question to answer, only because there's so many different types of mental illnesses. But if you just feel like you are not yourself, if you're feeling more tired, if you're feeling like it's difficult to organize your thoughts, if you're finding that to be able to get out of bed, like that motivation, that get up and go seems to be going away, or if you're finding that everything starts to feel really overwhelming, or that you start having like pressure in your chest and like difficult to breathe sometimes, those are all signs that you are starting to struggle with your mental health. Another big sign for a lot of people that they don't realize is if you're starting to use an increase in substances. So whether that's an increase in alcohol use, marijuana use, or street drugs, any of those kind of things can be a sign that you're trying to cope with uncomfortable feelings and trying to, well, basically try and distract yourself or at least calm them. And substances could help for a little bit, but they are not a long-term solution to mental health issues.
That's great. So you said that your lack of motivation of waking up can be a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how do I identify the type of mental illness that I'm going through?
Sorry, I think I might have cut out there for a second. Just start from where we left off. So that's what it looks like here